The massive alien ships appeared in Earth's sky like dark clouds blocking the sun. Admiral Kithfer stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the small blue planet through his viewing screen. His purple skin gleamed under the ship's lights, and his four eyes focused on the world below. "Another weak planet," he said to his officers. "Look at them, and they still use primitive rockets to reach their moon. Their weapons are nothing but simple nuclear bombs. This will be easy." The Vexery Dominion had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. They had destroyed 846 different worlds. Some planets surrendered quickly. Others fought and died. It did not matter to the Vexery. The result was always the same. On Earth, deep under the city of Seoul, Dr. Hyanwoo Park sat in front of dozens of computer screens. The underground command center stretched for miles beneath the Korean capital. Hundreds of people worked at their stations. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. "Sir, the alien fleet just came out of hyperspace," said Jin-A Kim from her station. She was the head of Global Defense Networks. Her fingers moved quickly across her keyboard as data flowed across her screens. "How many ships?" Hyanwoo asked. He had been preparing for this day for 15 years. His black hair was now gray from the stress of waiting and planning. 230 ships, sir. All of them are massive. The biggest one is 5 kilometers long, reported Taemin Lee. He managed the quantum communication systems that connected Earth's defense centers around the world. So-young Choi looked up from her console. She was in charge of humanity's most secret project. "Sir, they are broadcasting a message on all frequencies. Should we listen?" Hyanwoo nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The ugly face of Admiral Kithfer appeared on the giant screen. The voice was cold and without emotion. "Primitive humans of Earth. I am Admiral Kithfer of the Vexery Dominion. Your planet is now under our control. You have 12 hours to surrender completely. Give us all your leaders. Give us all your weapons. Give us all your resources. Do this, and some of you will live as our slaves. Fight us and every human will die." The message ended. The command center was silent. Everyone looked at Hyanwoo Park. He stood up slowly from his chair. His dark eyes showed no fear. "Woo Jin-han," he called to his communications officer. "All the world leaders connected?" "Yes, sir. The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of China, the President of Russia, all of them are waiting for your signal." Hyanwoo took a deep breath. "Tell them it is time. Activate Protocol 7. The room went completely quiet. Protocol 7 was the most secret plan in human history. Only 50 people on Earth knew what it really meant. For 30 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. "Sir Jin-A," Kim said quietly, "are you sure?" "Once we activate Protocol 7, there is no going back." When Hyanwoo looked at the alien ships on his screen, each one carried enough weapons to destroy a city. The Vexery had done this before to hundreds of worlds. It would show no mercy to Earth. "Yes," he said firmly. "Send the signal." Around the world, hidden facilities began to wake up. In the Sahara Desert, massive doors opened in the sand. Underground in Antarctica, giant machines started to hum with power. At the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, something huge began to rise from the seafloor. The Vexery had been watching Earth for 60 years. They had seen human technology grow slowly. They had watched humans build simple space stations and send basic rockets to Mars. Everything they saw told them that humans were far behind other species in the galaxy, but the Vexery had never seen the real human space program while they watched. Humans struggle with chemical rockets. The real fleet was being built in places the aliens could never find. Hidden in parallel dimensions, protected by technology that the Vexery thought was impossible. Humanity had been preparing for war. Min Ho-yoon sat in a command center buried 3 kilometers under the Gobi Desert. He was the head of Earth's Quantum Research Division. Around him, computers the size of buildings processed information faster than any Vexery machine. "Sir," he said into his headset, "quantum tunneling drives are online. Shadow Fleet is ready for deployment." On his screens, Minho could see the alien fleet above Earth, 230 ships that the Vexery thought would be enough to conquer humanity. They had no idea what was coming. In the underground facility, red lights changed to green. Massive doors opened to reveal something that should not exist. Ships that were bigger than anything humans had ever built in space. Ships that used technology 50 years ahead of anything the Vexery had seen from Earth. EUN-GSEO was only 28 years old, but she was the best alien language expert on Earth. She had spent 10 years learning to speak and understand Vexery. Now, she listened to their communications from the fleet above. "Sir," she said to Hien Wu, "they are laughing about us. They think this will be the easiest conquest in their history. They're already planning how to divide our planet between their commanders." "Let them laugh," Hien Wu said. "In a few minutes they will understand their mistake." The truth was that humanity had been ready for this day for decades. The crashed alien ships that governments said never existed had been humanity's greatest teachers. Scientists had learned to copy alien technology and make it better. Engineers had built weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Most importantly, humans had learned to work together in ways that no other species could imagine. Sir Taemin Lee reported, "All defense centers are connected. The global network is active. We have contact with our deep space assets." Deep space assets. The Vexery had no idea that humans had been building bases throughout the solar system for 20 years. Hidden bases on asteroids, under the ice of Jupiter's moons, in the rings of Saturn. All of them were invisible to alien sensors. "Begin the countdown," Hien Wu ordered. "Operation Reversal starts in 60 seconds. The alien fleet above Earth continued to wait. Admiral Kithfer was confident that the primitive humans would surrender soon. He had seen it happen hundreds of times before. The weak always surrendered to the strong, but humanity was not weak. They had just been very good at hiding their strength. 10 seconds, Janae Kim announced. Everyone in the command center held their breath. 5 seconds. The screen showed the alien fleet hanging in space, like vultures waiting for death. Operation Reversal begins now. Across the galaxy, the Vexery Empire began to die. Space around Earth began to tear open like fabric being ripped apart. The Vexery sensors on Admiral Kithfer's flagship started screaming warnings. Red lights flashed across every alien ship as their computers tried to understand what was happening. "Is this Kithfer?" demanded from his command chair. His 4 eyes stared at the viewing screen in shock. Space does not tear like this. It is impossible. But the impossible was happening right in front of him. Massive rifts opened in the darkness of space. Each rift glowed with blue energy that hurt to look at directly. And from those rifts, something emerged that made the Vexery Admiral's blood run cold. Human ships. But these were not the primitive vessels. The Vexery had been watching for decades. These ships were enormous. They were sleek and deadly looking. And they were emerging from dimensional tiers that the Vexery thought only existed in theory, deep under the Gobi Desert. Min Ho-yoon watched his screens with satisfaction. The quantum tunneling drives were working perfectly. His team had spent 20 years perfecting the technology that allowed ships to hide in parallel dimensions. "Sir," he said into his communication device, "Shadow Fleet deployment is successful. All ships are transitioning to normal space." Min Ho was 45 years old and had been working on this project since he was 25. He had missed his daughter's birthday parties, his wedding anniversary, and countless family dinners. But today, all of that sacrifice would be worth it. On his main screen, he could see the alien fleet above Earth. 230 ships that had seemed so threatening just minutes ago. Now they looked small and afraid as humanity's real fleet revealed itself. The UES. Retribution was the first ship to fully emerge from dimensional space. It was massive, over 6 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that the Vexery had never seen before. Captain Sung-Ho Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, looking at the alien flagship through his viewing screen. "This is Captain Kim of the United Earth ship Retribution," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You wanted to see our real technology? Here it is." The Retribution moved through space like a hunting shark. Its quantum drives left no exhaust trail, no energy signature that the Vexery could track. It simply glided through the void, beautiful and terrifying. Admiral Kithfer felt fear for the first time in his long military career. "How many ships?" he he asked his tactical officer. Sir, we count over 400 human vessels, and more are still emerging from the dimensional rifts. 400 ships. The Vexery had brought 230 ships to conquer what they thought was a primitive world. Now they were outnumbered almost 2-to-1 by ships that were clearly more advanced than anything in their fleet. Back in the Seoul Command Center, Hyunwoo Park watched the deployment with quiet pride. 50 years of deception had led to this moment. While the Vexery watched crude chemical rockets launching from Earth, the real human space program had been building fleets in hidden dimensions. Surgeon A. Kim reported, all Shadow Fleet vessels are in position. We have complete tactical superiority. The Shadow Fleet was humanity's greatest secret. For 3 decades, scientists had been reverse engineering technology from crashed alien ships. The governments had denied these crashes existed, but the wreckage had been humanity's greatest teacher. Dr. Hae-won. Chen had been the first human to understand dimensional physics. She had died 10 years ago, but her work lived on. In every ship that emerged from the rifts, her theories about parallel space had seemed crazy to most scientists. But she had been right. Captain Jaewon Park commanded the stealth destroyer Shadow Strike. His ship was smaller than the Retribution, but it was equipped with technology that would give nightmares to any Vexery engineer. His vessel could phase in and out of normal space at will, making it impossible for alien sensors to track. All units, this is Shadow Strike, he broadcast to the human fleet. Remember, we are not here to conquer. We are here to end the Vexery Empire once and for all. The human ships moved with a coordination that shocked the alien observers. Every vessel knew exactly where every other ship was at all times. They moved like a single organism, their quantum-entangled communication systems allowing instant coordination. Across vast distances, Commander Hai Jian-cho led the fighter squadrons. Her ships were small and fast, designed for precision strikes against enemy weak points. She had trained for 15 years for this moment, practicing maneuvers in hidden training facilities that the Vexery had never detected. All fighters form. Up on my position, she ordered. We go in fast and hard. Target their communication arrays first. The Vexery fleet tried to respond, but their movements were slow and clumsy compared to the human ships. They had grown soft during their centuries of easy conquest. They were used to fighting primitive opponents who could barely leave their own planets. On the alien flagship, Admiral Kithver's tactical officer delivered more bad news. Sir, their ships are not responding to our targeting systems. Some kind of quantum shielding is making them immune to our weapons. This was impossible. The Vexery had the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of worlds with their quantum disruption cannons and dimensional warfare systems. But the human ships seemed to be completely immune to their weapons. What the Vexery did not know was that humanity had spent decades studying their technology. Every crashed ship, every piece of alien equipment that had fallen into human hands, had been carefully analyzed and understood. Human scientists had not just copied alien technology, it improved it. Barham Shin sat in her cyber warfare center deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. She was humanity's greatest computer expert. She had been preparing for this day for 12 years. Her fingers moved across her keyboard as she initiated the next phase of Operation Reversal. Sir, she said into her headset, beginning network collapse protocol now. The network collapse protocol was humanity's secret weapon against the Vexery Empire. For decades, human agents had been studying the alien communication networks. They had learned that the entire empire was controlled by a single quantum network that connected every world, every ship, every facility. That network was about to become humanity's greatest weapon. On the alien flagship, communication systems began to fail. Admiral Kithver watched in horror as his connection to the rest of the empire started to break down. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are losing contact with the homeworlds. Something is interfering with our quantum network. It was not interference, it was invasion. Borm Shin's virus was spreading through the Vexery network like wildfire, taking control of their systems and turning them against their creators. all Vexery vessels came a broadcast in perfect alien language. Your empire is finished. Your technology belongs to us now. Surrender or be destroyed. The message was transmitted from every Vexery ship in the fleet. Their own communication systems had been turned against them. And across the galaxy, the same message was being broadcast from every Vexery world. Every station, every installation, the mighty Vexery Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, was falling apart in minutes. Admiral Kithfer stared at his screens in disbelief. The primitive humans had somehow taken control of his entire fleet. His weapons would not respond to his commands. His ships could not move. Even his life support systems were no longer under his control. "This is not possible," he whispered. "No species has ever developed this level of technology. It takes thousands of years of evolution." But he was wrong. Humanity had not needed thousands of years. It needed only decades of careful planning, brilliant engineering, and the willingness to work together toward a common goal. The deception was complete. The Vexery had been watching a shadow play while the real human civilization prepared for war. And now, 14 minutes after the alien ultimatum, the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia was about to discover what happened when they underestimated humanity. The real war was just beginning. The war clock in Sol Command Center showed exactly 14 minutes since the alien ultimatum. What happened in those 14 minutes would change the galaxy forever. Minute 1. The first human ship to attack was the UES Retribution. Captain Sung-Ho Kim ordered his gunners to target the alien flagship's weapon systems. The massive human dreadnought fired its quantum reality cannons. The beams of pure energy tore through space and struck the Vexery ship. The alien shields, which had protected them for thousands of years, simply disappeared. The quantum reality cannons did not just destroy the shields, they made it impossible for the shields to exist in the first place. "Impossible," Admiral Kithfer whispered, as his flagship shook from the impact. "Our shields are the strongest in the galaxy. Nothing can penetrate them." But the human weapons were not trying to penetrate the shields. They were changing the laws of physics around the alien ships, making their defensive systems useless. Minute 2. Commander Hajin Cho led her fighter squadrons in a coordinated strike against the Vexery communication arrays, or small ships, moved like deadly dancers, weaving between the massive alien vessels. Each fighter was equipped with weaponized black holes, technology that the Vexery had thought was impossible to create. "Black hole torpedoes away," she announced calmly, as her fighters released their deadly cargo. The tiny black holes moved slowly toward their targets, bending light around them as they traveled. When the torpedoes hit the alien communication towers, they did not explode. Instead, they consumed the metal and energy, growing larger with each second. The Vexery watched in horror as their own technology was eaten by miniature black holes. Minute 3. The stealth destroyer Shadow Strike, commanded by Captain Jae-won Park, demonstrated humanity's most terrifying capability. His ship phase-shifted directly inside the Vexery formation, appearing between two alien cruisers. "This is for every world you have destroyed," Captain Park broadcast on all frequencies. His ship fired its reality anchor weapons in all directions. The beams hit 6 alien ships at once, and something impossible happened. The Vexery ships began to fade from existence. They did not explode or break apart. They simply became less real, as if they were being erased from the universe itself. "What kind of weapons are these?" screamed the Vexery tactical officer on the flagship. "They are deleting our ships from reality." Admiral Kithfer had no answer. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Vexery had never encountered anything like this. The humans were not just more advanced. They were using technology that seemed like magic. Minute 4. Back in the Sol Command Center, Hyeon-woo Park watched the battle with satisfaction. Every human ship was performing exactly as planned. The coordination was perfect, thanks to the quantum consciousness network that linked every human commander. Surgeon A. Kim reported, "Our deep space assets are reporting successful deployment. The second phase is beginning." The second phase was something the Vexery could not have imagined. While they had been watching the battle around Earth, humanity had been activating hidden fleets throughout Vexery space, Ships that had been waiting in dimensional pockets near every major alien world were now emerging. Minute 5. On the planet Vexor Prime, the capital of the alien empire, emergency sirens began to wail. Massive human ships appeared in orbit around the world, emerging from dimensional rifts that opened like wounds in space. The planetary defense commander, General Vecmer, stared at his screens in disbelief. Where did these ships come from? Our sensors detected nothing. But the human ships had been there all along, hidden in parallel dimensions just a few kilometers away. They had been watching and waiting for decades, studying every detail of Vexori defenses. Minute 6. The human fleet around Vexor Prime was commanded by Admiral Kyung-Min Lee, veteran of humanity's shadow wars. His flagship, the EU's Liberation, was even larger than the Retribution. It carried weapons that could destroy entire planets. "This is Admiral Lee of the United Earth Forces," he broadcast to the alien world below. "Your empire is finished. Surrender now, and your people will live. Resist, and your world will share the fate of all the worlds you have destroyed." The message was broadcast in perfect Vexori language, but it carried an undertone that made every alien who heard it feel deep fear. The humans were not just threatening them. They were promising justice for 3,000 years of murder and conquest. Minute 7. Back at Earth. The battle was turning into a massacre. Vexori fleet, which had seemed so powerful just minutes ago, was being systematically destroyed. Human ships moved with mathematical precision, their quantum-linked minds allowing them to coordinate attacks that no other species could imagine. "Captain," Suncho Kim watched as his gunners destroyed another alien cruiser. "All units, remember the plan. We need some of their ships intact for evidence. Galaxy needs to see what the Vexori have been doing to innocent worlds." The human fleet was not just winning the battle. They were gathering proof of the Vexori Empire's crimes. Every alien ship they captured contained records of destroyed civilizations, enslaved populations, and murdered billions. Minute 8. The quantum virus that Baram Shin had released was spreading through the Vexori network faster than their technicians could contain it. On 847 worlds, alien military systems were turning against their creators. Defense satellites began firing on their own cities. Military bases found their weapons pointed at their own commanders. Communication systems broadcast human messages in perfect Vexori language, telling the truth about their empire's crimes. Minute 9. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kithfer finally understood what was happening. The humans had not just defeated his fleet, they had defeated his entire civilization. The quantum virus was reporting the status of every Vexori world, and the news was the same everywhere. "Sir," his communications officer reported with terror. In his voice, "We have lost contact with all our worlds. The humans have taken control of our entire network." Kithfer looked at the human ships surrounding his vessel. They were not attacking anymore. They were just waiting. The battle was over, and everyone knew it. Minute 10. In the Seoul Command Center, Taemin Lee received confirmation from human fleets across the galaxy. "Sir, all primary targets are secured. Vexori military capability is neutralized. The Empire is finished." Hien Wu Park nodded calmly. 10 minutes ago, the Vexori had been masters of the galaxy. Now they were prisoners on their own ships, surrounded by the species they had thought was primitive. Minute 11. The human fleet began broadcasting a message to every world in the former Vexori Empire. The message was simple and clear. The Vexori Empire is finished. Their reign of terror is over. You are free to choose your own future. On 847 worlds, populations that had lived in fear for centuries began to understand that their nightmare was ending. The impossible had happened. The mighty Vexori had been defeated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Minute 12. Admiral Kithfer's flagship shuddered as human boarding pods attached to its hull. The pods cut through the alien armor like it was paper using technology that the Vexori had never seen. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "they are boarding us.
Ow.
Our weapons will not respond to our commands." The Admiral realized that his ship had been taken over by the quantum virus. Every system was now under human control. He was a prisoner on his own vessel. Minute 13. Captain Sung-Ho Kim led the boarding party onto the alien flagship. Vexery crew stood frozen in shock as humans in advanced armor walked through their ship like they owned it. Admiral Kithfer, Captain Kim said in perfect Vexery, "You are now our prisoner. Your empire is destroyed. Your fleets are captured. Your worlds are free." The alien admiral looked at the human captain with confusion and fear. "How did you learn our language so perfectly? How did you know about our technology? We have been watching your world for 60 years. Captain Kim smiled coldly. "You were watching what we wanted you to see. While you studied our primitive rockets, we were building fleets in dimensions you cannot imagine. While you analyzed our simple weapons, we were perfecting technology that makes your empire look like children playing with toys." Minute 14. The war was over. Across the galaxy, human fleets reported complete victory. The Vexery Empire, which had ruled for 3,000 years, had been destroyed in 14 minutes. But the humans were not celebrating. They were working. Ships were being dispatched to provide aid to the worlds that the Vexery had oppressed. Medical supplies, food, and technology were being distributed to populations that had lived in poverty under alien rule. The age of the Vexery Empire was over. The age of human justice had begun. And in the Seoul Command Center, Hyein Woo Park looked at the clock and smiled. 14 minutes. That was all it had taken to change the galaxy forever. The Vexery had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity. It was a mistake they would never make again. Admiral Kithfer sat in the detention cell aboard the human ship Retribution. The cell was strange to him because it had no bars, no force fields, nothing that looked like a prison. It was just a simple room with a bed, a desk, and a window that showed the stars, but he knew he was trapped. The door would not open for him. The walls were made of some metal that his scanners could not identify. And outside, the human fleet controlled everything that had once belonged to his empire. "Captain." Sung-Ho Kim entered the cell carrying 2 cups of hot tea. He offered one to the alien admiral and sat down across from him. The human looked tired but satisfied. "Do you know what this is?" Captain Kim asked, holding up his cup. "Some kind of human drink," Kithfer replied coldly. "Tea. We have been drinking it for thousands of years. It helps us think clearly." The captain took a sip and looked at the alien. "I think you need to think clearly about what has happened to your empire." Kithfer's 4 eyes glared at the human. "You have won one battle. The Empire will send more fleets. You cannot defeat all of our worlds." Captain Kim smiled sadly. "You still do not understand. There is no Empire left to send fleets." He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. Red dots marked every world that had belonged to the Vexery Empire. As Kithfer watched, the red dots began changing to blue, one by one. "Vexer Prime surrendered 20 minutes ago," Captain Kim explained. "Your homeworld is now under our protection. The military government has been dissolved. The people are free to choose their own leaders." The alien admiral stared at the display in shock. "Impossible. Vexer Prime has planetary shields. It has orbital defense platforms. It has a fleet of 200 ships," had Captain Kim corrected. "All of those defenses were controlled by your quantum network. The same network that we took control of 14 minutes into your attack on Earth." The holographic display zoomed in on Vexer Prime. Kithfer could see human ships in orbit around his homeworld. But he could also see something else. Alien ships flying alongside the human vessels. Ships with the markings of species that the Vexery had conquered long ago. "Who are those ships?" he demanded. "The Zelthari, the Mokani, the Threnody. All the species your empire conquered and enslaved. They are free now. And they are helping us restore order to the galaxy." Back in the Seoul Command Center, Hyein Woo Park was coordinating the largest humanitarian operation in galactic history. On his screens, he could see reports from 847 worlds. Most of them were asking for help. "Sir," Genichim reported, "the Corvin system is requesting medical supplies. The Vexery left their population to starve after they stripped the planet of resources. Send 3 hospital ships, Hyen-Woo ordered, and a cargo fleet with food synthesizers. This was the part of the operation that the Vexery could never have understood. Humans were not conquering the galaxy, they were healing it. So Da Shung Choi looked up from her communication station. Sir, we are receiving surrender offers from Vexery commanders on 43 worlds. They want to negotiate terms. No negotiations, Hyen-Woo said firmly. Tell them the terms are simple. Release all slaves. Turn over all weapons. Submit to war crimes tribunals. Accept humanitarian oversight. That is not negotiable. For 3,000 years, the Vexery had ruled through fear and superior technology. They had never learned to cooperate with other species. They had only learned to dominate or destroy. But humanity had learned something. Different during their long history of wars and conflicts, they had learned that true strength came from working together, not from conquering others. On the world of Threnor, former slaves were seeing sunlight for the first time in generations. The Vexery had forced the Threnody people to work in underground mines, digging up rare metals for the Empire's war machine. Commander Dong-wook Choi stood in the main square of the planet's capital city, watching as human medical teams treated the freed slaves. His ship, the UES Mercy, was one of 50 hospital ships that had been sent to worlds damaged by Vexery rule. Commander, his medical officer reported, "We have treated over 10,000 patients in the last 6 hours. Of them have never seen proper medical care." Dong-wook nodded sadly. This was what the Vexery Empire had been built on. The suffering of billions of innocent people across hundreds of worlds. Set up permanent medical stations in every city, he ordered. Contact Earth's command. We need more ships here. The damage is worse than we expected. On Vexer Prime, the capital world of the former empire, chaos was slowly turning into order. Admiral Kungmin Lee had established a temporary command center in the former emperor's palace. But instead of ruling from the throne, he had turned the building into a refugee center. "Admiral," his aide reported, "the former Emperor Vexik is requesting a meeting. He says he has information about hidden weapons." "Bring him to the conference room," Admiral Lee ordered. "But keep him under guard. I do not trust any of these war criminals." The former emperor of the Vexery Empire was not what Admiral Lee had expected. Vexthak was old and weak, his purple skin pale with age. He walked slowly, supported by 2 guards. "I know you plan to execute me," the former emperor said as he sat down across from the human admiral. "But before you do, you should know about the doomsday weapons." Admiral Lee leaned forward. "What doomsday weapons?" "Hidden throughout the Empire. Weapons designed to destroy entire solar systems if we ever face defeat. Some of my commanders might try to use them rather than surrender." This was exactly what the humans had been afraid of. A dying empire might try to take the galaxy with it rather than accept defeat. "Where are these weapons?" Admiral Lee demanded. The former emperor smiled weakly. "I will tell you, but I want something in return. You are in no position to make demands. I want mercy for my people. Not for the commanders, not for the war criminals, but for the ordinary citizens who just followed orders. They do not deserve to die for what their leaders did." Admiral Lee studied the alien's face, could see genuine regret there, perhaps the first honest emotion he had seen from any Vexery leader. "If your information saves lives, we will consider your request," he said finally. Back on Earth, Borum Shin was working frantically to locate the doomsday weapons. Her team of cyber specialists had taken complete control of the Vexery network. But finding hidden weapons in a galaxy-spanning empire was like looking for needles in a cosmic haystack. "I found something," announced her assistant, Min-jae Park. "There are quantum signatures matching doomsday weapon designs in 17 different systems. Send the coordinates to our fleets immediately," Borum ordered, "and prepare the disarmament teams." The disarmament teams were special human units trained to deal with alien weapons of mass destruction. They had studied Vexery technology for decades, learning how to safely neutralize their most dangerous creations. On the world of Korvath, Colonel Hajin Nam led her team toward a hidden facility buried deep underground. The entrance was protected by automated defenses that could kill anyone who approached without the correct codes. Remember, she told her team, these weapons are designed to destroy solar systems. One mistake, and billions of people die. The team moved carefully through the underground tunnels. Their equipment could detect and neutralize most alien technology. But the doomsday weapons were something new and terrifying. Deep in the facility, they found it. A massive device that hummed with deadly energy. It was connected to the systems, star through quantum tunnels, ready to trigger a supernova that would destroy every planet in the system. Begin disarmament protocol, Colonel Nam ordered. And pray that our training was good enough. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on 16 other worlds. Human teams risked their lives to prevent the Vexari from destroying entire solar systems in their final act of spite. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Sung-Ho Kim received reports from all 17 disarmament teams. One by one, the doomsday weapons were neutralized. The galaxy was safe. He returned to Admiral Kithver's cell with news of the successful operation. Your Empire's final weapons have been disarmed, he told the alien. No more worlds will die because of Vexari pride. Kithver looked older somehow, as if the weight of his Empire's crimes had finally settled on his shoulders. How did you know? He asked quietly. How did you know about our weapons, our networks, our plans? We watched your world for 60 years. You seemed so primitive. Captain Kim sat down and poured himself another cup of tea. You made the same mistake that every bully makes, he said. You thought that being peaceful meant being weak. You thought that being divided meant being helpless. You never understood that our greatest strength was not our technology. It was our ability to work together when it mattered most. The alien admiral was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. What happens now? To my people, I mean. That depends on them, Captain Kim replied. Those who committed war crimes will face justice. But those who choose to live in peace will be welcome in the new galaxy we are building. A galaxy without empires. A galaxy where every world chooses its own destiny. Where no species rules over another. Where strength is measured by how much you help others, not by how much you can destroy. Kithver looked out the window at the stars. For the first time in his life, he wondered what it would be like to live in such a galaxy. The Vexari Empire was dead. But perhaps something better could rise from its ashes. 3 months had passed since the 14-minute war that ended the Vexari Empire. The galaxy was slowly learning what it meant to be free. But freedom, as humanity had discovered long ago, was more complicated than simply removing tyrants. On. The world of Zelthera ambassador the Ginsong stood before the newly elected planetary council. The Zelthari people had been slaves for over 2,000 years. Now they had to learn how to govern themselves. The human fleet will remain in your system for 1 more year, she told the council members. After that, you will be completely independent. The choice of what kind of government you want is yours alone. Council leader Taishfal, an elderly Zelthari with silver scales, raised his hand. What if we make mistakes? What if we choose badly?
Achie.
Smiled gently. Then you will learn from your mistakes and choose again. That is what freedom means. It's the right to succeed or fail based on your own decisions. This conversation was happening on hundreds of worlds across the former empire. Species that had lived under Vexari rule for centuries were taking their first steps towards self-governance. Some were doing well, others were struggling. All of them were free to try. Back on Earth, the newly constructed Galactic Council building in Geneva was preparing for its first session. Representatives from over 400 worlds would gather to establish the rules for the new galactic community. Hien Wu Park, now serving as Earth's first galactic coordinator, reviewed the agenda with his staff. The topics were complex: trade, agreements, mutual defense treaties, colonial rights, and most importantly, what to do with the former Vexari worlds. Sir Janae Kim reported, "We have received formal requests for membership from 312 worlds. Most of them are former Vexari colonies that want protection from other potential aggressors, and the others?" Hien Wu asked. 47 worlds want to remain completely independent. 31 are asking for limited trade agreements only, and 18 worlds are still deciding what they want. This was exactly what humanity had hoped for. A galaxy where each world could choose its own path, rather than being forced into a single empire. Minho Yoon, now director of the Galactic Technology Council, was working on a different problem. The former Vexery worlds had technology that was centuries ahead of most other species. But much of that technology had been used for war and oppression. We need to decide which technologies to share and which ones to restrict, he told his international team. Quantum weapons, dimensional travel, reality manipulation, these could be dangerous in the wrong hands. Dr. Sujin Cho, a physicist from the Seoul Institute, raised her hand. What about medical technology? The Vexery had advanced healing devices. Worlds that were damaged by the Empire could benefit from these. Medical technology? Yes, Minho agreed. Communication systems, agricultural improvements, environmental restoration tools, all of these should be shared freely. But weapons technology needs careful control. On the former capital world of Vexer Prime, the war crimes tribunals had begun. Admiral Kung-min Lee oversaw the proceedings from the converted palace that now served as a court of justice. The first defendant was General Zichther, former commander of the Vexery military. He had personally ordered the destruction of 17 worlds and the enslavement of over 50 billion people. General Zichther, the human prosecutor, began. You stand accused of genocide, crimes against sentient beings, and violation of the galactic laws of war. How do you plead? The Vexery general stood tall, despite his chains. I was following orders. I was defending my empire. I regret nothing. In the observation gallery, survivors from the destroyed worlds watched the proceedings. Many of them had tears in their eyes. For the first time in centuries, they were seeing justice for the crimes committed against their people. But not all the trials were simple. Some Vexery defendants claimed they had been forced to commit crimes or face execution themselves. Others argued that they had tried to minimize damage while following orders. Captain Sung-Ho Kim served as one of the military judges he had studied law for months to prepare for this responsibility. Each case required careful consideration of the evidence and the circumstances. The court recognizes that war creates impossible situations, he said during one trial. But the choice to follow illegal orders rather than face personal consequences does not excuse the harm done to innocent people. Meanwhile, on distant worlds, the search for missing persons continued. The Vexery had scattered populations across the galaxy, separating families and destroying communities. Now human ships were working to reunite people with their lost relatives. Commander Saw Young Choi led one of these humanitarian missions. Her ship, the UES Reunion, carried advanced genetic scanners that could identify family relationships across species lines. Commander, her aide reported, we have located 43 survivors from the Mokani homeworld. They are on a labor. Camp in the outer rim, set course immediately, Soyoung ordered, and prepare the medical bay. After 20 years in Vexery camps, they will need extensive treatment. The rescue missions were some of the most rewarding work the human fleet had ever done. Watching families reunite after decades of separation reminded everyone why they had fought the war in the first place, but not everything was going smoothly. On some worlds, former Vexery colonists were facing revenge attacks from the native populations they had oppressed. The humans found themselves in the difficult position of protecting the very people who had supported the empire. Colonel Hajin Nam commanded the peacekeeping force on Corvin 7, where tensions between the native Corvani and the Vexery settlers had erupted into violence. Both sides have legitimate grievances, she reported to Earth Command. The Corvani want their land back. The Vexery settlers say this is the only home they have ever known. Many of them were born here and had nothing to do with the original conquest. This was the kind of complex problem that would take years to resolve. Humans could stop the violence, but they could not force people to forgive centuries of oppression. On Earth, Barum Shin was working on a different challenge. The quantum network that had once controlled the Vexery Empire was now being converted into a galactic communication system, but the network contained records of every crime the Empire had committed. "We have found evidence of over 2,000 destroyed worlds," she reported to the investigation committee. "Billions of people murdered, entire species wiped out. The scope of the Empire's crimes is almost beyond comprehension." The evidence was being carefully cataloged and preserved. Future generations needed to understand what had happened so they could prevent it from happening again. Dr. Yoon Jeseo, now head of the Galactic Historical Archive, was creating a memorial to the victims of the Vexri Empire. The memorial would list every known world that had been destroyed, every species that had been wiped out, every person whose name could be recovered from the records. "We cannot bring back the dead," she said at the memorial's dedication ceremony, "but we can ensure they are not forgotten. We can promise that such crimes will never happen again." The promise was more than just words. The new galactic community was being built on principles that would make another empire like the Vexri impossible. No single species would have the power to dominate others. No military force would be large enough to conquer hundreds of worlds. Instead, the galaxy would be protected by the mutual cooperation of free worlds. Any aggressor would face not just one enemy, but hundreds of species working together to defend their freedom. Admiral Kithfer, still imprisoned on the Retribution, watched the news broadcasts of the developing galactic community. Captain Kim visited him regularly, not for interrogation, but simply to talk. "You have created something remarkable," the alien admiral admitted during one of these visits. "A galaxy without empires. I did not think such a thing was possible." "It is not easy," Captain Kim replied. "Freedom requires constant work. It is worth the effort. What will happen to my people, the ordinary Vexri who did not commit war crimes? They will have the same choice as everyone else. They can join the galactic community and live in peace, or they can choose isolation. But they cannot choose to rule over others." Kithfer nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is for the best. My species ruled for so long that we forgot how to live any other way." As the months passed, it became clear that the galaxy was healing. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Empire were now open to all species. Scientific knowledge was being shared freely. Art and culture were flourishing as species that had been suppressed for centuries found their voices again, but humanity remained vigilant. The deep space monitoring stations that had helped win the war against the Vexri were now watching for other threats. The galaxy was large, and there might be other empires beyond the reach of the former Vexri domains in the Seoul Command Center. Hyenwoo Park studied the star charts that showed the known galaxy. Beyond the mapped regions lay vast areas of unexplored space. Who knew what other civilizations existed there? Sir Taemin Lee reported from his communication station, "We are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Edge. Long-range sensors have detected what appears to be another empire. They call themselves the Hegemony." Hyenwoo sighed. The work was not finished. Perhaps it never would be. But humanity had. 1 year after the 14-minute war, the galaxy looked completely different. The old star charts that had shown Vexri territory in threatening red now displayed a peaceful rainbow of colors. Each color represented a free world that had chosen its own destiny. Hyenwoo Park stood in his office at the top of the new Galactic Council building in Geneva. Through the massive windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species landing and taking off from the spaceport below. Trade vessels, diplomatic ships, scientific expeditions, and refugee transports all moved in peaceful harmony. His reflection was interrupted by a knock on the door. Gina Kim entered, carrying a datapad with reports from across the galaxy. "Sir, the annual Freedom Report is ready," she said, setting the pad on his desk. "The results are better than we hoped." Hyenwoo picked up the pad and read through the summary. Of the 847 worlds that had been freed from Vexri rule, 791 had successfully established stable governments. Trade between worlds had increased by 400%. Scientific cooperation had led to medical breakthroughs that were saving millions of lives. What about the problem worlds? 56 worlds are still dealing with internal conflicts, but they are making progress. The peacekeeping forces, are helping them work through their problems. No world has asked to return to imperial rule. This was what made Haiyan Wu most proud. Despite the challenges of freedom, despite the difficulties of self-governance, not a single world wanted to give up their independence. On the world of New Threnor, former slaves had built a thriving democracy in just 1 year. President Taishmek, who had been a mine worker under Vexery rule, now led a government chosen by free elections. "We have made mistakes," he said during his anniversary speech. "We have argued and disagreed and sometimes made bad decisions, but they were our mistakes to make, and that makes all the difference." The crowd of Threnody cheered. They understood what their president meant. The right to make mistakes was part of the right to be free. Meanwhile, on the human ship Retribution, Admiral Kithfer had been watching the galactic transformation with growing amazement. His imprisonment had become more like house arrest as the months passed. He was allowed to read news reports, watch broadcasts, and even communicate with other Vexery prisoners. Captain Sung-Ho Kim visited him for their regular conversation. Over the months, these talks had become less like interrogations and more like philosophical discussions between former enemies. "I have been studying your species," Kithfer said as they shared tea. "I am trying to understand how you accomplished what seems impossible." "What do you mean? You created a galactic community without conquest? You brought together hundreds of different species without forcing them to submit to your rule. In 3,000 years of Vexery history, we never imagined such a thing could work." Captain Kim smiled. "You made the same mistake that many species make. You thought that strength meant the ability to dominate others. But real strength is the ability to protect others while letting them remain free. But how do you maintain order? How do you prevent chaos? The Vexery Empire was stable because everyone feared our power. Your galactic community should collapse into war and anarchy." "Let me tell you a story," Captain Kim said, settling back in his chair. "On Earth, we have a saying. When people work together willingly, they can accomplish anything. When they are forced to work together, they accomplish only what fear allows." He activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Images flowed across the screen. Great construction projects, scientific discoveries, artistic achievements, and explorations of space. We learned this lesson through centuries of war and conflict. We discovered that our greatest achievements came not when one group dominated all others, but when different groups chose to cooperate for mutual benefit. Kithfer studied the images carefully, but surely some humans refused to cooperate. "Did you do with them? You gave them the freedom to choose isolation?" "Some human communities still live separately from the rest of our species. We protect their right to be different, as long as they do not harm others. The Vexery way would have been to force them to join or destroy them. And that is why the Vexery Empire fell in 14 minutes, Captain Kim said gently. Your empire was built on fear and force. But fear makes people weak and desperate. Force makes them angry and resentful. Eventually, someone always finds a way to fight back. In the Deep Space Monitoring Station beyond Pluto, So-Young Choi was tracking the movements of the mysterious hegemony that had been detected at the galactic edge. Her instruments could detect their ships, but the aliens remained too far away for detailed analysis. "Sir," her assistant reported, "long-range scanners show the hegemony fleet is moving toward the former Vexery border worlds. They appear to be testing our defenses." So-Young opened a communication channel to Earth Command. "This is Deep Space. Station Alpha. We have confirmation of hegemony fleet movements. Recommend activation of alert status yellow." The message was received in Seoul within seconds, thanks to quantum communication networks. Haiyan Park read the report with concern, but not panic. Humanity had learned to be prepared for threats while hoping for peace. "Activate the early warning network," he ordered. "But do not mobilize the fleet yet. Let us see what these hegemony beings want before we assume they are hostile." The early warning network was one of humanity's greatest achievements. Unlike the centralized system that had doomed the Vexery, the human network was distributed across hundreds of worlds. World-contributed sensors and communication nodes, creating a system that could not be destroyed by attacking any single point. Within hours, the network had detected and analyzed the approaching hegemony fleet. The aliens had impressive technology, but their ships showed the same rigid formation patterns that had made the Vexery predictable. Admiral Kungmin Lee studied the sensor data from his flagship. The hegemony appeared to be another empire built on the old model of conquest and domination. Their ships were designed for intimidation rather than efficiency. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, "The alien fleet has stopped at the edge of our sensor range. They are broadcasting a message. Put it on the main screen." The face that appeared was reptilian, with cold yellow eyes and scales that reflected the light like metal. The alien spoke in a harsh, commanding voice. "Beings of this sector, I am Supreme Commander Krextel of the Hegemony. Your weak alliance will submit to our rule or be destroyed. We give you 1 solar cycle to surrender your fleets and accept hegemony law." The message ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Admiral Lee looked at his officers and saw no fear in their eyes, only determination. "Send a reply," he ordered. "Tell Supreme Commander Krextal that his ultimatum is rejected. Inform him that this galaxy is protected by free beings who will not submit to tyranny." "Should we mobilize the full fleet, Admiral?" "Not yet. But activate the Shadow Fleet and prepare defensive positions. If the hegemony wants to test us, they will learn the same lesson the Vexery learned." Back on Earth, the news of the hegemony threat spread quickly through the Galactic communication network. But instead of panic, the response was unity. World after world volunteered to contribute ships and resources to the common defense. The Zelthari sent their fast attack squadrons. The Threnody offered their heavy cruisers, the Mokani provided their advanced sensor ships. Even former Vexery worlds that had joined the Galactic community volunteered to help defend against the new threat. Ambassador Dajin Song coordinated the response from the Galactic Council chambers. "This is not just humanity's fight," she told the assembled representatives. "This is a fight for the freedom of every world in our community." The response was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, hundreds of different species were choosing to fight together, not because they were forced to, but because they believed in the same principles. Dr. Yoonji Seo, now serving as the Director of Galactic Intelligence, analyzed everything they could learn about the hegemony. Her research revealed a pattern that was disturbingly familiar. The hegemony follows the same model as the old Vexery Empire, she reported to the military commanders. Centralized control, fear-based governance, and the belief that superior technology guarantees victory. "Then they are about to learn that technology alone is not enough," Admiral Lee replied. As the deadline approached, the free worlds of the galaxy waited to see what the hegemony would do. Some hoped the aliens would choose peaceful coexistence. Others prepared for war. But all of them knew one thing for certain. The Age of Empires was over. Galaxy belonged to free beings. Now, and they would fight to keep it that way. Captain Sung Ho Kim made one final visit to Admiral Kithfer before the potential battle began. "Your hegemony friends are about to make the same mistake your empire made," he told the Vexery prisoner.
"How?"
"They are not my friends," Kithfer replied. "But you are right. They think they can win through fear and superior firepower. They do not understand what they are facing." "And what are they facing?" The former admiral looked out the window at the stars where hundreds of free worlds were. Preparing to defend their liberty, they are facing something that has never existed before in galactic history, he said quietly. They are facing beings who choose to fight together instead of being forced to fight together. They are facing the power of willing cooperation. "Will you help us?" Captain Kim asked. "Will you share what you know about Imperial tactics?" Kithfer was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "It is time for empires to end forever. Perhaps my people can help undo some of the damage we caused." Galaxy prepared for what might be another brief war. Humanity reflected on how much had changed since that day when the Vexery fleet had appeared over Earth. They had not only defeated an empire, they had created something entirely new, galactic community based on freedom, cooperation, and mutual respect. A place where every species could choose its own destiny while standing together against those who would destroy that choice. The hegemony was about to discover what the Vexery had learned too late. In the new galaxy, the age of humanity had begun. Not as conquerors, but as protectors of freedom. And anyone who threatened that freedom would learn why empires no longer ruled. The stars,